So, welcome, welcome. The MRC experience. Are folks able to see this okay? The MRC experience will give you an opportunity to work with and train with a group of people who, like yourself, want to be part of a solution when disasters or public health emergencies happen. We're everywhere. We want to give you a little bit of information about the Medical Reserve Corps as an organization, and this picture here shows us, I think we really are up to 250,000, I think is the count that I have seen on our national website, which is medicalreservecorps.gov. 250,000 volunteers. We're all across the nation, as you can see, certainly in the highly populated areas here in the Northeast. There you are sitting somewhere in that little crowded spot, down the coast, the West Coast. And late last night, I emailed one of our coordinators in Snohomish, I think that's how it's pronounced, Washington, where you may have seen that there were terrible fatalities due to mudslides. And our MRC volunteers are deployed and activated right now at this time. So we work across the entire nation. Volunteers, who are MRC volunteers? Well, they're people of all ages, from all walks of life. Some folks have a medical background, some folks don't have a medical background. We need both. Sometimes people get a little concerned and they wonder, they hear Medical Reserve Corps, oh, but I'm not a nurse, or I'm not a doctor. Well, neither am I. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I come from that perspective. We always find that when we are deploying and we are assisting where there's an emergency or disaster, we need lots of non-medical folks to help out with the logistics, with giving information to people, registering people, setting up tables, setting up cots. In fact, we look at a ratio of about 4 non-medical to 1 medical person. Some studies have shown that 5 non-medical to 1. So if you're from a non-medical background, absolutely you're in the right place. What do MRC volunteers do? Well, your role depends on your physical ability, your training, your expertise, and your interests. And one of the reasons we really encourage people to come to an in-person training is because you get to network and you get to know each other, but we also get to know you. So when an MRC coordinator knows what your interests, your strengths, and the areas that you don't want to be engaged in. When we know that information, we share that with each other, we get to know each other a little bit better. We're able to fit people with different jobs and different skills that are a much better match. And all service is voluntary. To give you an idea of what we have nationally to offer, and it is a big umbrella. Some of these organizations, and in the back you may not be able to see it quite as clearly, but here are some of the pieces and organizations that are under our National Freedom Corps. We have National and Community Service, CERT, C-E-R-T. Is there anyone here who is currently in a CERT group? Community Emergency Response Teams? And what community are you with?
Well, East Hampton.
East Hampton, okay, great. So CERT and MRC, we're like brother, sister, brother, siblings. We're both under Citizen Corps. And just to keep it in simple terms, Medical Reserve Corps is closely aligned with the side of government that would be considered public health. So it would be the Mass Department of Public Health, and on a national level, Health and Human Services. CERT is more closely aligned with public safety, so that would be our fire, police, EMS, Homeland Security on the national level. Volunteers in policing service, Medical Reserve Corps. This has to do with fire services, fire and Peace Corps, and you've probably also heard of AmeriCorps. So there are many different opportunities. It's a big umbrella, and that is great news. And at the same time, it's also one of the challenges that we have to work together. Certain regions of the country are stronger and have more MRCs. Some regions have more CERT. Some have other faith-based groups are the primary emergency disaster response groups. Our partners include public safety, public health, our hospitals, community health centers, MAResponse.org, you'll hear a little bit more about that. That is a statewide database. Every state in the US has some kind of a volunteer registration database. They're called ESAR VIPs in other communities, and I won't even go through what that acronym stands for. It is a way that each state reaches out to primarily medical personnel, other groups as well, including MRC, so that if in the case of a large-scale emergency or disaster, we're able to contact folks, bring them in, and deploy. Partners we just talked about were our CERT, but also very importantly, American Red Cross and faith-based organizations, which are taking a stronger and stronger role in the Northeast as we have had what seems like a very persistent succession of disasters, whether it be Sandy, school shootings, Boston Marathon, tornadoes, hurricanes, tropical storms. And our faith-based organizations have become more engaged. It's interesting that in the Bible Belt, so to speak, in the South and the Southeast, many of the faith-based groups, the churches, the mega churches sometimes they're called, have been involved in this type of work for many, many years. And why? Why do you suppose?
They're community-based.
They are community-based. Great. What else?
Part of their mission, their mandate.
It's part of their mission to serve, to help, to heal. Yep. And many times they also have a facility where they can prepare meals or they have some kind of networking into the community that's already established. People know each other, they're trusted, known individuals and organizations. And most importantly, because they've had to deal with it. The experience of having emergencies or disasters is what brings people forward into this work quite often, or feel called to the volunteer work. And our community-based organizations like the United Way, Salvation Army, there are many different foundations that assist. So MA Response, this is a statewide secure database of pre-credentialed health care professionals who are interested in volunteering during a public health emergency. Tricky part about that is someone is medical and that their job is to work ER at Bay State. They may be deployed, of course, first things first, to their job and their responsibility. So we also want to know, what are folks' real availability? If somebody's what we call a two-hatter or a three-hatter, they're involved in different organizations. Someone could conceivably be an RN at Bay State, an MRC volunteer, and be engaged in their church's activities. So we have to figure out in real time who's available and when they're available and to schedule those pieces. MRC members, medical and non-medical, are encouraged to register at www.maresponse.org. And that, for those of you who are Hampshire County, that is how Michael, as the Hampshire County MRC coordinator, communicates with folks quite a bit, because we have the ability to email through the database, we have the ability to text, we have the ability to leave phone messages, and it's a good way for us to communicate and to share information, but also to get folks into a standby or ready to deploy. Any questions so far? I would like to also just say at this point, I'm the one who's standing up here talking to you about this information, but I firmly believe that we all have our own experiences, you have your own knowledge, information, and I invite you to jump right in. We have some other professionals in the room. You folks, jump right in, add to what we're sharing here, and feel free to ask questions. This is our parentage. I like to share this with folks because sometimes in Western Mass, we may not feel as connected with the rest of the state, even with Central Mass, let alone those folks that are way out east in Boston. And gosh, they know we're about as far away as California sometimes. But just to let you know that we are part of a large national organization, I find that very helpful. One of the things that was very heart rendering, it was healing, was when our Northeast Region 1 MRC coordinator told me during the first few days after the tornado that she had the surrounding states on standby to assist. The relief that came with that. They didn't deploy, but just the knowledge, someone's got your back. It was an enormous, I think my shoulders were up into my earlobes with stress and tension, and they came down just a wee bit. So U.S. Surgeon General, Massachusetts MRC through Department of Public Health, Western Mass MRC, 4 counties in Western Mass, and each county, well, I should reframe that. Hampden County is the most populous. We're 52% of Western Mass population. We have 10 individual MRC units. That's what I do. I coordinate those 10. And it's from Little Munson to Springfield, Holyoke, Westfield, and 10 communities in between there. A couple of our gals are from there. And Hampshire had 5, 1 consolidated recently, and has 4 individual MRC units. Franklin County, with only about 70,000 or so population, if you put that in perspective, Springfield's 154,000, has 1 MRC that combines their Medical Reserve Corps, their CERT team, and I believe their disaster animal response team. And the same for Berkshire. Again, not as much population, but a challenge of an enormous geographic area to cover. Sometimes folks want to know if they can join an MRC unit that is not in their hometown. They spend 50, 60 hours a week, perhaps in the place where they work. And yes, you certainly can. Folks can look into that. We have a mission. Dun, da, da. Our mission is to build healthy and resilient communities. You could probably thank Mary for that pithy little statement, but it's a pretty big mission. Build healthy and resilient communities. So we're not just about emergencies and disaster preparedness and response. MRCs activate and assist public health in many, many different ways. We'll talk about some of those ways that we're able to reach into the community. Down the Cape, they've had different types of little campaigns at the beach having to do with skin cancer and bringing information and sunscreen to folks as they're coming to the beach. We help with annual flu clinics. There are many different things that MRC volunteers have engaged with. Our vision is what we see. Individuals and communities committed and totally ready to manage all hazards events. Totally ready. Woo! That's a tall order. All hazards, we'll talk about that phrase. What it really means is any type of situation. It could be a man-made, it could be a criminal, a shooter, an active shooter. It could be some kind of biological, chemical situation, natural disasters, weather-related, etc. We are so happy you're here today because volunteers who become trained, credentialed, and are affiliated with the MRC become an enormously valuable asset to our community and to our region. The reason the MRC exists is exactly because what happens when there's an emergency or disaster, many, many good people, goodwill, and some maybe not so much. You know, emergencies or disasters also bring out individuals whose intentions are not good, that may be of a predatory nature when folks have their walls and their doors and their locks blown away and their belongings are strewn all over. Some folks may be coming in more of a predatory mindset to an area where there has been an impact. Thousands of people deployed, self-deployed, to Ground Zero. Many folks in the local fire, ambulance, police, self-deployed to Ground Zero. And when they got there, what greeted them?
Chaos.
Chaos, yes. What was there? Think about the immediate aftermath
Fire, debris,
Yes,
unsafe.
very unsafe, right. It was debris, and sadly, there really weren't any people for them to help, right? That's why people deployed. They thought, I will go and I will help. And what they found was a very unsafe, very volatile, disaster, debris-filled, the air quality. Now, all of those volunteers that had self-deployed, now they needed to be toileted, watered, fed, have a cot to sleep in. So they became a disaster for the local officials and the first responders who are trying to grapple with something that had never happened before, trying to figure out what the next steps are and trying to keep people safe. And many people came in. So these unaffiliated volunteers can be problematic. Principles of operation. So part of what you will find in our policies and procedure manual, which is on our website, wmmrc.org. You will find our principles of operations. We have a well put together document for you to learn more about the infrastructure and sort of the legal, so to speak, guidance for our MRC. We treat all with respect, and we honor all volunteers. We work with a policy and a principle to communicate clearly, to ensure volunteer safety. We work within the scope of credentials, training, and comfort level. Deployment is voluntary. So you may get an email, you may get a text, you may get a telephone message from Michael Nelson that a hurricane has hit and we're opening a shelter and we need 5 people on Tuesday at 5 p.m. and the shifts will be X, Y, and Z long. And you get to decide, and we'll talk about this quite a bit this morning, if you are willing, able, and this is going to work for you to deploy. It's voluntary. It's your decision. And we want to honor our code of conduct and confidentiality agreements, which are part of our policies and procedures. Oops. So folks get to think about where it works for you best. Maybe if you're new, you might want to say, oh, gee, I think I'm just, kind of check this out. I'll join in the basic level. And, if there's some trainings going on, let me know. If you need somebody to work in a shelter, sure, contact me. Some other folks might want to get more engaged and say, well, I really want to be part of that MRC. I want to be part of the leadership, or I want to be part of at least the group that is going to trainings on a regular basis. I would say my friends over here that have been to a number of different trainings, some of our veteran MRC folks, are certainly in that active tier, if not the leadership, which would be working as a coordinator, working, assisting a coordinator, assisting with trainings, deployments, etc. So how do we talk and what systems do we use? Well, we communicate with email, phone, and through our website, wmmrc.org. We have a lot of information on that website. I really do encourage folks to take a look and see what we have. And I'll encourage you to take a look at it, look at some of the videos. Most of them are short, they're a few minutes long. None of them are really long. And then share it with someone. Share it with someone in your family, share that information. Hey, I just thought, you might want to take a look at this. I went to this training in East Hampton the other day, and it'd be good for us all to have our plans in place. So trainings can be announced through email, website, calendar. We usually try to have them at a convenient location throughout each county. Next Saturday, I will be doing this presentation at Springfield Technical Community College. And the School of Nursing students will go through a full day of the train-a-thon. 2 weeks ago, Western New England University has a new College of Pharmacy. And I was able to have a train-a-thon with 75 new, fresh and bright pharmacy students. And it was terrific. And they probably had no idea, wait a minute, when I thought I'm going to pharmacy school, why am I here to learn about emergencies or disasters? And as we went through the day, they realized their role, their skills, what they have to offer as someone who is a pharmacy learner and then will become a professional, it's enormously critical. When you think about just about any time there's an emergency or disaster, people are going to be separated from their medications, there are going to be additional health concerns, and we need those folks. So it was a great, great day. Our trainings are in person, and you can also access these modules, the MRC 101, the Incident Command System, and the Psychological First Aid through the internet, no cost. Deployment and response and exercises, we also get to do community outreach. And I've always encouraged volunteers to bring forward to the unit coordinator the things that you're interested in. Maybe you have a passion. In October, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Maybe you want to set up, or maybe you want to ask if you can be part of the first aid station for the walks that we have annually. My MRC units are doing a number of different road races. Some are purely for fun, others are fundraisers. We've done everything from the ultra marathon length and to 5Ks and walks around the park. So our types of training are required are the MRC 101 Incident Command System, ICS. I will use acronyms. I will try very hard to explain every acronym in real words. And if you hear one that you're not familiar with, please don't hesitate to ask. Optional but encouraged, CPR, emergency dispensing site, community or regional shelters, pandemic flu response, just emergency dispensing sites. In Massachusetts, we tend to have, I'm not sure if it's a habit, I'm not sure if it's a talent, but we tend to do things in a very unique way. We have 351 cities and towns, which means 351 boards of health, autonomous boards of health. Most other states work in a county health structure. So that brings on additional challenges, that there's so many more people and local jurisdictions and politicians and selectmen and mayors to coordinate when we have different deployments. We also use the term emergency dispensing site. So if there was an outbreak of some type of disease and we needed to deliver medications to large-scale populations, we call them an EDS or an emergency dispensing site. Many other states call them pods, which is a point of dispensing. EDS, pod, EDS. Hang in there with me, there will be more acronyms today. Just in time, sometimes we call it JIT. Our JIT is when an incident has happened, you have been deployed. It could be for an exercise or it could be for an actual deployment. And that is when your unit coordinator or the person in charge of logistics, operation planning would give you a pretty much up to speed, just in time. What do we need to know? What information do we have? How are we going to proceed through the next, how long your shift will be, and then to distribute perhaps job action sheets, which will give you an idea of what you will be doing during your shift. Any questions about that? Yes?
Do you want to mention, Michael,
Yeah.
the shelter exercise at UMass?
Yes.
This would be a moment to do that during this part?
Michael, you want to come on up?
For people to take part in that?
Certainly, if people are interested, on Thursday.
We're going to hug so he can share the microphone with me.
On Thursday, April 10th, we're hosting a full-scale exercise, sheltering exercise at UMass Amherst. It goes overnight into the 11th, and the event will, it'll test the sheltering plan that we've produced in Hampshire County. We have about 300 people coming to the event, and everybody's welcome to come. We're starting to get close to our capacity, so we might have to cut it off soon. But we'll be testing all the different portions of it: registration, mental health, medical capabilities, animal sheltering, and everything that would be involved in a shelter. So I can actually leave some information up at the front. So if you guys want to take the website and register later on, we can get you that information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure.
Michael, UMass Amherst. Again, the date is Thursday, April 10th at UMass Amherst, and you can get more details from Michael. If you have an opening on your calendar and you really want to see what this is all about, nobody does it like the UMass Amherst MRC. They have done some pretty amazing full-scale exercises that, Mima has looked at them and said, whoa, I think they're jealous. They wish they had it like that. The planning is excellent, the thoughtfulness, the opportunities to participate. It's not just observation. And you know what? I think they usually feed you at no cost, too. So think about it.
Can I just add that people who volunteer aren't required to stay overnight in the shelter? I guess you can if you want. There are people that are going to be doing that. That's what full scale means. But you might just want to stay for the day or half a day or. Yeah.
So the event officially starts for the victims and volunteers at 3 o'clock. The major operations will be from 3 till 9, and then the overnight component will start after that. If people are going to come but don't want to stay, we would encourage them to come from the 3 to 9 portion.
So 3 to 9, if you're not going to pull an all-nighter and you don't have like a real urge to go back to school, but if you do, you can do that as well. So if you miss those glory days, here's a chance to jump back in. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Jackie. So our expectations, and we do have some expectations, and we take these seriously, although we try not to take ourselves too seriously. We want folks to complete the required trainings, and we do feel that we don't have a timeline per se. You're going to knock them down today, which is really brilliant because now you're going to be, one and done. It's fantastic. But people can access this on the internet. You can access them in person. We have the trainings at different locations throughout Western Massachusetts and across the state. We will ask folks to sign a confidentiality agreement and to sign the MRC Code of Conduct. And again, I believe that's something that Michael will be following up with you or your own unit coordinator. Volunteers may be terminated according to disciplinary procedures that are outlined in the policy manual, and this is for safety. This is for safety. If there's dishonesty, breach of confidentiality, we may be working with individuals who are very vulnerable, who have medical health issues, personal information, and just as we would follow HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Protection and Portability Act, we want to keep patients or customers, clients, victims, residents, whatever terminology we're using in that situation, their information is confidential. Unsafe work habits, if someone is an extreme risk taker, if they're putting themselves in danger, they're putting others in danger, we really need to terminate that. Violation of our code of conduct and substance use abuse during deployment. So this is where I talk to you about you. And there are going to be a couple of things that I'll highlight. Takeaway, I hope you go to our website. Takeaway, first things first. If there's any little slogan at the end of the day that you take away, first things first, take care of you. This is when you get all the permission in the world to be selfish, think of yourself first. We need you to take care of you. So core competency number 1 is protect yourself and your family. Know how to protect your own health, safety, and overall well-being for that of your family, the MRC team, and the community. So first things first. Volunteers, responders, professionals, if they are compromised, if they're not taking care of their own health, if they are worried and distracted with what's going on with their family members, they haven't put a plan together, there hasn't been any communication, the pets are untended, there's no one to look after, then we have a person who's distracted and who's not really able to do the work that we're asking them to do. So you're number 1. We need you to take care of you. Protecting yourselves, we get to learn about and use standard personal protections, PPE, personal protective equipment is our acronym for that. And you can ask about training, about how to use personal protective equipment. Some of our health and hospital and community health centers can provide some of that information, and we can also provide those trainings when asked for through the MRC. Life Safety Code. Anybody in the room familiar with this? Has anyone seen or heard the term Life Safety Code? You have, good. Through CERT?
CERT and fire department.
And fire, of course. So, common sense. Much of what we go through today, you're not going to be tested. There's no SAT, there are no college boards, there's no IQ tests, it's not nuclear physics. It's common sense. But we lay it down and we repeat it, maybe ad nauseum, but we repeat and repeat because when an emergency or disaster happens, we want people to be able to be prepared and to respond through their muscle memory and through their cognitive memory and to be able to act quickly. So first, protect yourself. And that begins with going through a mental checklist. Am I willing, able, ready? Are my affairs in order to be able to say yes to a deployment? And if you can't check off all of those, the answer is no. Then we protect others. Third is control the incident. Finally is property and environment. So the most generic example that I use for the life safety code is when you think about getting on an airplane. You sit down and the flight attendant is going to go through their little, right? Exits, airbags, life jackets under the seat, things along those lines. And the first thing is they tell you put on your own air mask, even if you have children or someone else, an elderly person that you're taking care of, or you're sitting next to someone who needs assistance. Yourself first. We want you to think about practicing healthy habits. It's a good thing. It's a selfish thing. I feel better if I'm practicing healthy habits. You probably do too. We function better when we practice healthy habits. And if we can eat well, get rest, and plenty of exercise, or the exercise that works within your needs, keep your immune system strong. Follow good hand washing and cough etiquette practices. And this is for everyday reminders. And I know I need it. I know I need to be reminded every single time I get to have the opportunity to do the MRC 101. I get to think about what my affairs look like. Do I have my supplies at home? Have I been taking adequate care of myself? What do I need to change? So it's a very, very helpful reminder. Number 2 is family preparedness. Okay, family is defined in a very broad sense. It could be the people you live with. It could be the people that you feel emotionally connected with. Have a family preparedness plan. In addition to that, know about school plans, workplace plans, and local community emergency plans. Is there anyone in the room that has a student, a child, or you're a guardian to someone that's in public schools or private school K through 12? One? I do? You do? Okay, a couple of us. Do you know your school's emergency plan? No. Are you familiar with your school's emergency plan? And how come you are?
I work within the school system, so I'm privy to it.
She works within the school system, so she's privy to it, so that means you're special. You're very, very special. But gee, how come you're not so special? What's up with that?
I'll be finding out quick.
She says she'll be finding out quickly. So our schools have plans. Some schools are very active in emergency preparedness, and certainly in the past decade with the tragic school shootings and the increase in what seems to, well, any one of us would say has happened much too often. Schools have emergency plans. They have plans for evacuation. They have plans for lockdowns. They have plans for sheltering in place, which is another term that we use when folks are asked to stay and to not leave where they are, whether it be the school, their home, their workplace, because it's not safe. And some of them are the best kept secrets. Boy, oh boy. You know, if the NSA could get into disclosing some of those, we'd be all much better off for it. So be proactive. Be proactive. Find out about the school emergency preparedness plans. And very importantly, if the young person in your lives, grandchild, child, et cetera, whomever, neighbor, if they have some additional needs, if that child has autism spectrum, if they have some mobility issues, if type 1 diabetic, they have some additional needs, perhaps vision or hearing impaired, find out what is in place for that individual. We have been working as a region to bring this piece forward to school districts and to community members and to parents and to educators, to staff, that we want to have folks more educated about this. We want to start looking at 504 plans and IEPs that include information about where it's appropriate about emergency preparedness response. Because certainly if one thinks about a child with autism spectrum disorder, an emergency disaster situation, someone used the chaos word a little bit earlier. Chaos, chaos. Add that to someone who's challenged to function in a stabilized environment. And we don't have to think too far or use too much imagination to just see how disruptive and how traumatic that could be. Look into the school plans. Workplace plans. How many people leave their home and go to another facility for their work? Okay. Do you know your workplace emergency preparedness plans? Yes? 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 Okay. Has your workplace had any kind of emergency drill? Evacuation? Excellent. I'm impressed. Good. What about if you had to stay there for 72 hours? What if you were in a situation that you were told you could not leave? Would you have what you need?
I do in my car.
You do in your car. Let's play a game. 72 hours, 1, 2, 3 days, right? 72 hours. We are stuck in this room. We can't get out the door. We can't get out that door. You cannot leave this room. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bit more fun, and I'm going to pretend that there's a wall there and we can't get to the restrooms or the kitchen. Okay? So you with me? Here we are. This is going to be fun. And you thought, you know, God, the train-a-thon is going to be long enough. Okay. So now she's going to be here talking for 3 days. Okay, 72 hours.
No coffee?
What do we have? What do we have?
Outright cannibalism you're talking about.
We have electricity and water.
Yeah, let's go with what we have. We'll get to the stuff that we don't have in a moment.
Sink and a refrigerator right through that door.
Yeah,
But you can't go out there. Those doors are all barricaded. That's right.
the water bubbler there. Does it
We have a water bubbler. Have you looked at it? It's kind of corroded and nasty. There's an awful lot of
I would take the chance to drink.
iron in the water. It needs to be filtered. What else do we have?
We have safety, we have coverage over us.
We do. We have shelter. We have electricity.
We have communications.
We have communication because we have cell phones, right? How many people have a cell phone with them? How many people brought their charger? Ooh, great.
Well, that's all right. We can turn all the cell phones off but one.
So Jackie's saying we can turn,
Then use another. That's how
we can take turns. So we might have to communicate. We might have to do some team communication to figure out how that's going to work, right?
Hardwired phones in the building. Oh, not in this room.
Yep.
I have a ham radio with me.
Is it in the room?
Yes?
He has a ham radio, so we can connect with the wider world. Absolutely.
Trash cans for bathrooms.
We have trash cans. Yes.
Flower pot over there.
You guys are good. You guys are good. I have groups that don't ever want to get to the trash can thing. They don't really. The pharmacy students were not too thrilled about talking about toileting and trash cans. It's a reality. We have to be a little bit creative. What else do we have?
At the moment, we have some food supplies that we could ration.
We do. We do. Sometimes when I play this game, I stand in front of the food table. So you have to get past me. Coffee, all right. But, 24 hours, can we do it? Oh, people say you can do anything for 24 hours, right? 48 hours, can we do it?
Well, it depends. We'd have to take a survey of people's medical needs here and see who needs what. We might
Jackie-
have diabetics in the room.
Good.
We might have people with low blood sugar
Good.
or other conditions.
Good. Jackie's saying we may need to take a survey, and folks, who has a medical condition that requires medication? If you feel comfortable, raise your hand. Okay. Who has that medication on their person for the next 3 days? Me neither. Right. I have talked to both of my nieces are, two of my nieces are type 1 diabetics. One was diagnosed when she was just shy of 3 years old, and her younger sister was diagnosed when she was about 6 months old. And yes, they live very normal, active, fabulous, terrific lives. And I remember talking to them at an Easter dinner one time and asking if they, they're on the pump and they're active, and one's in college and one is a junior in high school at this point. And I asked, do you have insulin at your school? Oh, sure. In the nurse's office, which is how far from your classes? Oh, well, it depends which class I'm in and where I am in the building. Okay. And what if you couldn't leave that classroom? How much insulin would you have with you? What if you could leave the classroom but not the building? How much insulin, how many days supply do you have? Well, one unit. I mean, not even 1 day per se. So we don't think in terms, we may think in terms of a brief backup, but we don't think in terms of an extended backup. And large-scale emergency disasters, things are shut down, inaccessible. 72 hours is the rule of thumb that we use. It's going to certainly take time before any federal assets are able to come to our area, put that together. So we have some things. How many folks think that we could probably make it through the 3 days? Okay, you might feel a little gnarly, right? Okay, we might not be talking to each other too close. And what don't we have? The medications. What else don't we have?
We don't have a lot of food.
We don't have a lot of
Or water.
food. Don't have a lot of water. Enough to get by. We don't have.
We got paper on the walls.
Those lovely multi-purpose photographs. Okay, so there are some things that we don't have. What else I'm thinking?
Blankets or pillows.
You're assuming the electric would be.
I'm assuming that we have the same climate conditions, yeah.
Adequate rest facilities. I mean, I know we can sleep on tabletops or on the floor, but some people, that may not be the best thing for them.
Oh, so we might need to find out about folks' additional needs. And that's a very real piece that happens in sheltering. Someone could be a bariatric individual that needs a larger seating arrangement. Some folks need to be somewhat upright, cannot lie completely prone.
CPAP. People that need
Some
breathing.
oxygen.
Yeah, or oxygen.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is we might not have access to be able to assist those in our lives that we generally care for. We do have communications, but what if you're a person who has an elderly parent and it was your night to go help prepare dinner or help to put them to bed? Do you have somebody that you can contact? Is there a backup plan? Have you talked to your siblings? Have you talked to your neighbors who would be able to get access to your residence to feed the cat, to feed the dog? Personal plans, family preparedness, and our local plans. Each community has what we call a CEMP, C-E-M-P, Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. East Hampton Emergency Management Director, EMD, will have a CEMP, and that will outline the different hazards in the community. It will outline many different aspects of how the community, the municipality, the local government will respond. Make a 72-hour plan. Okay, I'm going to see if I can hyperlink to this video. Cannot locate the internet. All right.
Are you trying to get on the internet?
Yeah, you know, I might skip this because we started a little bit late, so I think I can let that one go.
When I was setting that up, I just clicked right by that, I didn't set it up
Right.
for Internet access.
But I will for the incident command system. Thank you. Core competency number 3, know our incident command system. What a segue that was, huh? Standardized system used by all responders. It is a clear management structure with unity of command, which means one leader, defined roles, defined responsibilities. Incident command system uses something that we call a span of control, so that groups are chunked in small groups and modules. One person would not be responsible for supervising 50, 75, 150 people. We want to keep it in small groups with supervisors and a chain. And we try to use common terminology for positions, procedures, and equipment. We will go into that much more later this morning. Just a quick picture, the pyramid for the incident command system, so you have an understanding. The commander and the command staff is our safety officer, a liaison officer who would be communicating with other departments and other jurisdictions and other agencies that are helping. Public information officer that we fondly call a PIO. PIO, and that is the one voice to media and to the public, so that there's a singular voice that has accurate information. And then we have our command pieces here with operations, planning, logistics, and finance. Number 4, know the MRC emergency role. Where do we fit? Wow, when you think about a large-scale emergency or disaster, a number of different fire, police, EMS, you're going to have media deploying, you're going to have health, you're going to have transportation issues, we're going to need to bring supplies in, you're going to need to move things out. How does that all get coordinated, and where do we fit in that? We have what are called ESFs, which are emergency support functions. And ESF 8 happens to be where public health sits. We talk about the ESF desk, and literally it's a desk sitting in, say, MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency offices. If there's an emergency operations center that has been opened, we would have a public health representative at the phones, at the table, coordinating with the highway, the first responders, the volunteer and donations managers, mass care, which would be Red Cross for sheltering.
Who typically sits at that desk in a real disaster? Is it Charlie King?
In a real disaster, who sits at the ESF 8 desk? We have the state's emergency operations center would be in Framingham,
Right.
which is where MEMA has the bunker. And it is a bunker. You go down a ramp into the facility that is underground. So we would have probably Massachusetts Department of Public Health, Emergency Preparedness Bureau, individuals who are assigned to that. Locally, Agawam is where our MEMA, it's called Region 3 and 4, which is Central Mass and Western Mass. So in Agawam, I might be the person that would go to the ESF 8 desk, or maybe Mary is. It would depend on who's available and what the incident is. And then we would be able to coordinate with our Red Cross partners who would be sitting at ESF 6. A hospital liaison person would be at another table. So what do? We support public health and public safety responders. MRC volunteers are not first responders. I opened up by talking about how important it is that you're here and you're an affiliated now volunteer. We know who you are, trained, credentialed, do a background check, the CORI check. We don't self-deploy, ever. Dangerous, not helpful, problem. We follow established protocols and job descriptions. So this just gives you a little bit of a visual here. MRC provides support during 4 stages of an emergency: prevention, protection, response, recover, and there's sometimes a 5th, which would be to mitigate. The cycle continues. It's an ongoing cycle. It's fluid. We look and learn. We respond. We do. We talk. We assess. We do meetings after an incident where we look at what we need to improve, what went well, what worked, what didn't. And there's always something to improve. And that's why I love the work. because it constantly changes. There are constantly new opportunities. And even when we plan from A to Z, there's some other letter from another alphabet that's going to come in, and every incident is different than what is on the drawing board. You can't prepare for every aspect, but we can very much prepare for the basic components and roles and responsibilities. Questions? Okay, core competency number 5, we want to learn communication protocols. MRC volunteers are trained to utilize incident command system, which will be our piece that we'll start in about 20 minutes. Please do not talk to media. Now, media will be very interested in getting the scoop. That's their job. They're doing their job. They want to know how you feel as a volunteer. What did you see? Tell me about it. Do you want to explain anything? We do not talk to media as a group. One person who is assigned to that, and it might be a person who is designated by the mayor, by an incident commander, but we respectfully defer and say, no, thank you, you can talk to my supervisor or go to the Emergency Operations Center. I don't have any information. Fundamental to safety is having accurate information. You know, in today's world with instant communication, Twitters and Facebooks and social media, there's so many ways that people can communicate. And in an emergency or disaster, it's very difficult to assess. It takes time. And people want instant information. It takes time to get an accurate picture of the extent of the damage, number of fatalities, the needs, et cetera, et cetera. With instant communication, there can be misinformation, which you can imagine someone puts out information that, you know, I heard so-and-so and something happened at the schools and, you know, gunshots went off and someone told me they think that like 20 kids were killed. It could be misinformation, and that would certainly be harmful. I'll explain why, but I think you can just jump in with that. Well, of course, it would, you know, create so much distress and chaos and concern, and then people who are going to rush to the scene because their loved one is there. And we can also get disinformation. So misinformation is an unintended mistake. Information is an intentional placing of information to cause some type of a reaction, and can both be very, very harmful.
Kathleen,
Yes?
media often takes things out of context.
Well, we just have a new bumper sticker that media often takes things out of context.
What? Media often takes things? Oh,
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
You made the comment about social media, you made the comment about not talking to the media, and I understand those. So if we were to be sitting, working at a shelter, doing whatever we do, and we take a selfie and there's 3 people behind us, have we not breached their confidentiality if we post that to our Facebook page?
Yes, you have. The question is, if we are not speaking to media, we're not putting information out into our own social networks or through the media to the commercial networks, take a selfie, 3 or 4 people are in the background that haven't given permission, would that be violating their confidentiality? Yes, it would. That's a great question. And it could be completely innocent, unintentional, no one intended to hurt someone. So we want to be mindful of that piece. In fact, you know, our good videographers today, thank you very much for being here, you know, had me sign a release, and this is something that we do as well. Yes?
Another thing is media is tenacious, and they will harass you for information. And you want to be helpful, and you have to resist, and that's the way.
Ned is completely accurate, and tenacious is a wonderfully diplomatic word for that description. And again, it is the job of the person in media to get a little bit of a different story or different angle. And some media are all about the you know, what's the stunning, what's the tragic, or what's the hype?
I was in the Northampton shelter a couple of years ago, and a volunteer, appeared to be a volunteer, came in with a cake to offer, you know, from people in the shelter, and it wasn't. It was a media person. And she began to take pictures with her phone and ask questions, but, I mean, that was pretty sneaky, pretty, you know, that was, you know, but my responsibility at the time was to notify, I think, Michael, or I think you were there in North, in the, right, remember about, you know, that was pretty.
Was that following the fires?
That
There were
was
some
the,
displays?
October.
Oh, the Snowtober. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I came in, I'm gonna help you, here's the cake.
Right. So people can get creative in trying to access not just media, and I don't want to spend too much time bashing media because we certainly appreciate and need our media to provide accurate information to us. We want it for ourselves and for others. But other folks with motives that are not appropriate may try to seek access. And that's why we do some very basic things like have t-shirts, have a badge. Again, back to the unaffiliated volunteer, or an SUV we call them, the spontaneous unaffiliated volunteer. The asset of having you identified and known is enormously helpful.
I was just going to say, I do photography for the fire department, and we always ask Incident Command what they want us to do. And the photographs that we take are for in-house use only, and then Incident Command or the public information officer decides what can be released to the public.
Great.
And to the media. And when we have, you know, Channel 22 or whatever, on a scene, we generally just try to ignore them unless they get in our way, in which case we tell them to leave. But
Safety first. Point being, staying within these lines of communications and protocols. If you are in a position that you are taking photographs, know where that is allowed to go and where that's not allowed to go. Part of it is respect. Part of it is also to spare yourselves from any other legal liabilities or responsibilities.
I think anyone coming into a shelter that wants to take photographs has to have a release from you, so you can say no photographs, period.
Right. So his point is that everyone could hear that people coming into a shelter that want to take photographs need permission, they need to have releases signed, but we're also talking about folks that are going to try to circumvent that. We want to know how to use communication equipment, and that might mean handheld radios. We can talk about some other types of communications, maintaining our confidentiality, and trying to be open, direct, and tactful. So in an emergency or disaster, my experience is chaos, noise, confusion, difficult actually hearing, difficulty perhaps people have had to leave an area, they don't have their reading glasses, difficulty being able to get information and to communicate that. So you'll notice that the pace of my speaking this morning, it's clear, I'm trying to be clear, trying to take it at a regular a pace that's not either too fast, too slow, so folks can understand. Repeat the message. I've repeated a couple of your responses, one because I'm the only one who's mic'd for folks to be able to hear this, and two, so that we can all be on track with that. I need to not assume that everyone has fantastic, perfect hearing. I need to not assume that everyone has vision that doesn't require any kind of assistance. And when we can, we want to use multiple communication channels, cell phone, texting, landlines, laptops, internet, Facebook page, Twitter. Core competency 6, mental health, behavioral health. Stress is a person's normal reaction to an abnormal situation. So stress is normal. All emergencies or disasters do provoke stressful situations and responses. You come first. First things first, protect yourself, take breaks, eat well, exercise, be aware of your own stress level, and do not self-medicate or be cautious of that. We're going to spend time this afternoon with the psychological first aid. Sometimes it's called behavioral health first aid. Just a couple of points as far as this introduction. It's about being calm and compassionate. When we talk about psychological first aid, we're not going to be talking about psychotherapy. We're not doing analysis. We're not looking at your childhood and what happened and how things. We're just working on towards safety and security. Little things, asking someone, do they need that blanket? Would you like some water? Is there someone that you need to call? How can I help? We try not to presume to know, because I don't know. We don't know. We get to acknowledge problems, basically let folks know, yes, this totally, I empathize. This is a very hard situation. And what do you know about it? That you can provide some constructive ideas or actions. We expect that we will have telephone service in a few hours. We have been told by the incident commander that, public safety have deployed and the situation is stabilized. Be aware that we all react differently to a crisis. Be aware that me, you, I, any one of us will react to a different crisis at a different time and a different day. It could be the same crisis, and we could still respond very differently because we're human. We are fluid, we are dynamic, we are changing beings. Learn about and respect cultural diversity. There are many terrific cultural trainings for folks to learn more about other cultures, diverse cultures, and what might work with one group of people, may not work with another group of people, to enhance communication and to be respectful. With the West Springfield shelters that were opened during the tornado aftermath, the Merrick section of West Springfield is mostly apartment buildings, and these were newer Americans. Many were not English speaking. Many were Bhutanese, and others had different dietary needs. They were not all-American McDonald's French fry eaters, vegetarian and rice. And so having that food available was a big task. That was something that a Medical Reserve Corps really needed to figure out. And we did. We worked with a faith-based group. We worked with the Islamic Center of Western Massachusetts, and they connected us with local smaller restaurants and food suppliers. It's fascinating.
As far as behavioral health, there's a number of homeless vets out there. Some of them have PTSD, and they could wind up in a shelter. So you have to be aware of something that we probably cannot deal with, but know what the resources are available to get help for that individual.
Thank you for that point. There are individuals and groups of folks in our communities on a daily basis that require additional assistance, and that could be with mental health or behavioral health issues. And again, not to assume, but try to find out how we can be of assistance and to be helpful. We'll go into some of that a little bit more. Thank you. Volunteer deployment. Know your unit's notification system. Is it going to be by phone? Is it going to be by email? Is it going to be MA Responds? We also have a network that those of us who are in the biz are connected with HHAN, which is the HAN, Health and Homeland Alert Network. And we get all sorts of little blasts about, the Emergency Operations Center is open and the blizzard is happening, or we learned something about some kind of a virus. And these are health alert net messages that come through the Mass Department of Public Health. And update your contact information regularly. I really encourage you as a volunteer to be mindful that when you change your email, you change your phone, you change your address, to let your unit coordinator know that, because we're just not always going to be aware of that information. So please take responsibility for that. Repeat, never self-deploy. Activation, our unit coordinators will request volunteers. Follow your activation instructions. Ask about security. I want you to leave today with a skill set that is your checklist of whether you are willing, able, ready to respond or not. And I want you to leave with an understanding that there are going to be certain questions that you want to ask. When, where, how long, what will I be doing, what do I need, will there be food there, whatever pieces you need. Maybe you need to bring your own medication with you. Maybe you need to find out if the roads are safe enough for you to go. The ice storms that we had in Worcester, and I think it was late 2009, December 2009, in Worcester County in the central and northern part of Massachusetts. Well, Hampden County, ironically, was not really touched that badly. So we were asked to send MRC folks to Worcester. And one of the questions I asked was, well, how were the roads? The roads were terrible. I wasn't going to send MRC volunteers until we knew the roads were safe to travel. So that was an early learning experience. Ask about security. Will there be security if you're in a shelter? The urban shelter in Springfield, we had 300 people living, not just staying overnight, living 30 days, 30 nights. And we needed to have appropriate security shelter for the residents, for the workers, for volunteers. Carry your ID and your badge. Bring your own basic supplies. When in doubt, if you don't know what's going to be there, have something in place for yourself. Sign in and sign out. I'm going to wrap this up quickly. Our core competencies are personal limitation awareness. Guess what? We all have them. We all have them. If you're unsure about your job limits, ask. Work within the limits of your license. So I'm not going to do RN nursing work. Because why? I'm not an RN. Okay? Let's stay right within our skill set. Know your personal abilities. And that can mean when you're fatigued, that you need a rest or you need to break. Training, job descriptions, ask for job action sheets, and know who's in charge. Know your incident command structure. We do offer, I should say, the state offers some liability protections for Medical Reserve Corps volunteers. It's varied, and the coverage depends on working within your job description, your credentials, the situation, and community protections. Some communities designate their MRC volunteers as special municipal employees, so they're under the umbrella of the liability coverage of the community. Others don't. Federal government offers the Volunteer Protection Act, and the state has Good Samaritan laws. Here, a list of resources. Our WMMRC.org, MA Responds, our national website. Ready.gov has a fabulous, just a plethora of downloadable brochures, information, children, folks with special needs, pets, how to take care of it. Mass.gov, and CDC is the Center for Disease Control.